What's going on, guys? It is a prospect day today on this episode of Locked On Anaheim Ducks with a little bit of a twist in the middle. So let's go ahead and roll that audio.
You're Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for well over a decade, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, this podcast is free and available across all platforms and is also ad-free on Amazon, so check us out there. Also on YouTube. So there you go. All right, so we've got a whole slew of prospects that we're going to talk about, and also just want to let you know that on the second segment, kind of sandwiched in the middle, we will have a couple of guests on to talk prospects, and they focus more on the defensive side, which is great, and I kind of want to focus more on the other positions and kind of gauge my feeling as to where we are as far as where the prospects might end up and what kind of impact they will have. I'm going to focus more on this season instead of further down the line, because the preseason starts this month. We're in September. So we're not that far away from seeing some hockey action already. Yeah, can you believe it's already September? I kind of feel like this last 3 months have been a blur to me, but they literally, in my case, they literally have been a blur for me the past 3 months. Oh gosh, I wouldn't wish what I went through on my worst enemy. So I'm going to actually start with the goaltending. And the reason I'm going to start with the goaltending is because that is the one position that I feel the prospects are still good at, but I don't think they're being given as much of a chance as I would like. And technically on every single list, Lukas Dostal is still considered a prospect, and apparently the higher up in the Ducks organization still consider him only a prospect, and that is clearly evident when Ducks management decided maybe Dostal's not quite ready yet. With the Alex Stalock signing, that all but guarantees that Dostal is not going to begin the season with the Anaheim Ducks. Gibson is going to stick around. Gibby is going to be a Duck this season, despite earlier reports in the summer. Gibby looks like he is going to stick around. So what that means, Gibson starting, Stalock backing up. Hey, good news for the Gulls fans. You get Lukas Dostal for one more season, and I think only one more season, and then that's it. And then there's going to be a decision. Either the Ducks have to move on from Dostal, or Stalock says bye-bye and Dostal's ready. And I think Dostal's ready now. I truly believe that. This was evident in Dostal starts in Anaheim. At least some of them last season, but a lot of those misleading stats should not go against young Dostal, mainly because the defense was that bad last year. I mean, you could throw in any goalie in that situation that they're put into, and of course the numbers are going to look bad, and that's where you have to look at some of the really deep analytics, and one of my favorite analytics sites is Evolving Hockey, and they do a good job of illustrating how valuable Dostal can be and how good he is given the circumstances, and given how many shots he saw, given how many high danger chances he saw, which was a lot, by the way. So I do think Dostal's ready now. As soon as Gibby or Stalock goes down, Dostal's going to go back up immediately. And I think we're going to see, unfortunately, a repeat of what happened last season. I got to remind you what happened last season, where you had at least an injury to, Gibby got injured last season, and Dostal was the first one that came up. How about our favorite person, Anthony Stolarz, who got briefly hurt But you know what? As soon as someone gets hurt, up comes Dostal, and in comes Ole Eriksson Ek for the goals, which does not exude any confidence. A goalie that should exude confidence is Calle Clang. We haven't talked a whole lot about Clang on this podcast, and I think we're going to start to talk about him a little bit more. I know myself and John Broadbent talked about him a little bit over the summer and how good we felt about Clang in general. I know we have rookie camp coming up, and it'll be interesting to see how both Clang and Alexander do in this upcoming rookie camp for the Anaheim Ducks, which is coming up very soon, by the way. I can't believe we're already this close to Anaheim Ducks rookie camp. And you can bet that I'm going to try to make it there this year. I'm really going to try to make it there this year. So, hopefully if you guys go, I look forward to seeing you there. But those are some names that I think the Ducks need to look at, and some names that the fans should go, yeah, I like him a lot. But Dostal has a chance to take over the starting role sooner rather than later. I don't know if Gibby's going to stick around after a couple seasons. Stalock might retire. I think it is going to be Dostal's time very soon. So he is still my biggest key prospect as far as goaltending is concerned. All right, we're going to keep that segment rather short because we do have a couple of guests coming on. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to the first intermission, and then I will bring on some guests, and they will talk more about the defensemen. So we'll get to that on the other side. And now I want to talk to you guys about FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. And hey, you know what? You have football season has just started. The NBA and NHL seasons are also going to begin very soon. And what better place to check out all the latest props, odds, lines than FanDuel? Because right now, new customers can get $5 and $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Additionally, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's a good deal, folks. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is super easy to use and states you can use it in, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props, futures, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel is the official online sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and please gamble responsibly.
Alrighty, so moving on to the Anaheim Ducks. Now we're going to be talking about this prospect pool in depth, but for me, what really makes the Anaheim Ducks such a high prospect pool in both of our eyes is the defense depth. I mean, in terms of defensive prospect pools, there isn't a comparable in the NHL. I think they're on top in terms of the quality that they have in the system. I mean, you look at the prospect pool itself, you look at the depth in there. I mean, we're talking about guys like Pavel Mintyukov, who's probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, non-NHL playing defenseman right now, just in terms of watching him. He's so fun. On top of that, you've got guys like Olen Zellweger, who just won CHL Defenseman of the Year for good reason. Let's start with those two, really. So who's your favorite between the two, and who do you think is going to have a better NHL career?
Oh, that's tough.
It's a tough one, eh?
You're making me make a tough decision here, especially because I was able to watch Mintyukov live in Ottawa quite a few times after he got traded at the deadline.
Yep.
And while he was kind of forced into a different style of play once he was traded, which made him less effective because when you try to control how Mintyukov plays, you are restricting him. Yeah. And he's at his best when he can just be free-flowing and play as he wants to. And I thought he was a lot better in Saginaw when he had that freedom. Mm-hmm. That said, I still think I'd go with Zellweger ahead, but it's really tight. So two very special defensemen. Mm-hmm. I think with Mintyukov, you get a tremendous combination of offensive creativity, dynamism, and defensive strength. He is very well-rounded and can do just about anything that you want him to do. He can make some big hits if he needs to. He can clear the net front. He can go end to end and score. He's a great playmaker. He has a wicked shot.
He can forecheck.
He can forecheck. Genuinely, he can. I've
Yeah.
seen it happen many times, and sometimes the Ottawa coach would then be a bit angry at the bench, but he did it well, so it's fun to watch, and he's very versatile, which is an incredible strength for him.
Yeah.
Zellweger, however, I think I have to give him the edge. He has this fluidity and dynamism that I don't think any defensive prospect right now can match. Guys like Lane Hudson could if he were a better skater, but he's not, and Zellweger is an elite skater. David Jiricek could, but he's still a little bit wonky, and Zellweger isn't. And I'm not saying he's the best defensive prospect in the league, but he's definitely the smoothest. And I think that this is a player who will QB a first power play for years to come, and could likely be an impactful NHLer within a year's time. And he is just a tremendous prospect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, for me, I give the slight edge to Zellweger just based on with Zellweger, it's the toolkit. I mean, the tools are amazing, but it's just the way that he brings out every tool and blends them together seamlessly it's ridiculous. Watching him this year has been just an absolute treat, and watching him makes you love hockey, which is very hard. It's very rare that you get to say that about a player who's not in the NHL. I mean, watching him is just such an enjoyable thing. There's just fluidity and just an effortlessness to the way that he carries himself on the ice. That's insane. The hands on him are ridiculous. The playmaking smarts, the ability to see lanes that others don't, and even the shot has improved a lot. He's a pure offensive defenseman for me, but he's still able to hold his own in his defensive zone. He's not the type of guy who's going to clear the net front and be that physical presence, but at the same time, you want him to be playing in a specific role. If you pair him with a guy like Tristan Luneau, who they also have in the system, Tyson Hines, Noah Warren, those are the types of guys that you can pair to an Olen Zellweger, and they'll just bring out his skill set even further. But circling back to Minchikov, I've always described him as a coach's nightmare and a GM's dream. That's how I've always described him. And in terms of just, he does things that coaches don't want their defensemen to do, but he'll win you games and cups and awards. Like, that's what he does. So I'm very interested to see how those two develop in the future. I think them being on the same pair would be just too chaotic for anyone. I don't think that, I think the NHL would implode. But then you circle to guys like I mentioned. I mean, Tyson Hines and Noah Warren are two very interesting defensemen who are able to hold their own in their own zone, who are also able to defend the rush really well because they've got really good footwork. Tristan Luneau is in the same boat, but he's also got some decent offensive upside. He just won QMJHL Defenseman of the Year. So you got a trio of really good defensemen in there, and some of their depth options and depth pickups that they've got. I mean, they've got Jackson Lacombe, who played a couple NHL games and looked really good. They've also added Rodwin Dionicio, who's a long-term prospect, but one of the most creative and fun players you'll watch out of the OHL. So they've got some really decent pickups on D. They've also added some good goaltenders in Damian Clara, and they've got Lukas Dostal, who just graduated as well. So some decent option in between the pipes. And at forward, we've got
a guy like Leo Carlson.
Yeah,
we could probably mention him, right? Like, I think he qualifies for our content here.
Absolutely.
I mean, Leo Carlson is awesome. This is a player that I think every scout fell in love with during the 2022-2023 season. And while I think we had him ranked a little bit lower than average because we had Matvei Michkov ahead of him at Dauber. This is a player who thrives in competitive professional environments, and that's not something that you say about many draft eligible players. Leo Carlson grew a tremendous amount in his draft year season as well. Every opportunity he was given, he thrived in. This is a power forward playmaker who is one of the smartest players outside the NHL today, who, while the defensive game still has some warts, there's a very, very clear path for it to become a significant strength in 3 or 4 years' time. He can do pretty much everything. I think the goal scoring game is a clear area that needs a lot of work, but basically every other offensive tool is high end, whether it's the playmaking, the handling, the dynamism, the deception, the planning of
goal scoring,
everything on puck and off puck. He's equally effective. And He can play a variety of roles. He can play either left wing or down the middle, though he should be developed as a center, and he will be in
Absolutely.
Anaheim. I'm positive. But yeah, Hadi, is there anything else about Leo Carlsson that I missed?
He's really good.
He's really good. Yeah, there we go. That's
absolutely. That's something up for him. But I do want to give a quick shout out to some of the other guys that they have in the pool at forward. I mean, they've got Nathan Gaucher, who we haven't even mentioned, who's probably going to be a very good middle six power forward winger. I think that he's developed his game in decent enough ways that I could see him become that middle six guy. I had a lot of doubts in his draft here, but he's proven me wrong so far from what I've seen. I don't think he'll be a center long term. I'd be quite surprised. On top of that, you've got Sasha Pastujov, who's only gotten better since getting drafted, just putting up ridiculous numbers in the OHL after transferring. He's been looking real good, and he signed as a LC, so I'm interested to see where that goes. And that's not even mentioning some of the guys they added this year. They've added Colson Peacher, who I'm a big fan of. Other guys like Yegor Sidorov. They have Sam Colangelo, who's still in the system. Jacob Perreault, who played a game last year. And I'm interested to see where he goes. So it's a lot of depth overall for the Anaheim Ducks in multiple positions. For me, the kind of lack of high-end potential at forward outside of Leo Carlsson kind of kept them outside of the top three. But they were fairly close for me, and it was a bit of a debate between them and the next team on our rankings.
Welcome back to this final segment of Locked on Anaheim Ducks. Once again, you're locked in with Jason JD Hernandez. Special thanks, by the way, to Hadi Kalakeche for kind of hosting that little roundtable on. They talked mostly about the defensemen of the Anaheim Ducks, and I would agree with Hadi on this one. The Ducks have one of the deepest defensive pools in the entire NHL, and there were some names that he threw out there, which I completely agree with, by the way. Mintyukov, I think, is my choice. Actually, not my choice for top defenseman. I think my top defenseman, personally, is Olen Zellweger. I saw what he did in San Diego a couple of seasons ago. I saw what he did last season. There's no reason to believe that Zellweger cannot contribute, maybe even next year. I mean, I think he will probably start off in San Diego, but I would not be surprised to see Olen make his way to the Ducks this season. Would not be surprised at all. All right, so we talked about goaltending, talked about defense. We haven't talked really a whole lot about the forwards in this particular podcast, so I'm just going to start with Leo Carlsson because it's the obvious choice. Carlsson, number 3 pick overall. I think he's going to make the team right off of camp. Mainly because Isaac Lundestrom got hurt. Let's rewind. Lundestrom got injured while training. He injured his Achilles. He's out for 6 months, so he's out till the All-Star break. It was expected that there might be some competition, but now with Lundestrom out, this opens the door wide open for Leo Carlsson to make the team outright, and my opinion, I think he makes it. I see the speed that Carlsson employs. I see the extremely high hockey IQ that he employs. To me, he's an obvious choice to make the team. And this is kind of weird because there was some quotes earlier this summer from Pat Verbeek where he said, quote, "Patience is going to be required from everybody, from myself, from the coaching staff, even from our fans. They're good prospects. They just need time to grow, time to mature. They're so young, it's not an easy league. We're going to find the right league. If it's the NHL, great. If the NHL's not it, we'll try San Diego. If that's not it, then he'll go back to Orbro. We're just going to wait and see." End quote. Look, I don't think Carlsson would want to spend the entire season in San Diego, and frankly, he shouldn't. If nothing, he could go the Troy Terry route and have a few games in San Diego, dominate, and then say, oh, he belongs in the NHL. Look, that scenario happens all the time, where someone has a few games in the AHL, they light it up, and then they go on to have long careers in the NHL. It's happened time and time again. I wouldn't be shocked if it happens again in this case. So that's my take on Carlsson. One other forward, well, two other forwards that I really like. Nathan Gaucher, who I think will probably wind up in the AHL this season, but he's a big time power forward who I think could really show some improvement still, but he's shown that improvement over the last year. So I like Gauthier a lot. And someone else that I personally like a whole lot, Sasha Pastujov. Sasha, the brother to Nick Pastujov, who played for Coachella Valley last season. Sasha could be a San Diego goal this season, but if he makes San Diego out of camp, he'll immediately one of their better goal scorers. And Sasha, I think, is someone that could make a tremendous difference in San Diego. Could he make the Ducks? Look, he can make him as a 14th or 15th man at this point. I mean, he had 98 points last season between the Guelph Storm and the Sarnia Sting. This coming season, I think he starts in San Diego, but he's going to have to show that he's a top contender in San Diego. Someone else who he will contend with is, Jacob Perreault, who is still technically a prospect. Perreault kind of showed out a little bit the previous season. Last year kind of took a step back, but let's be real, everybody took a step back in San Diego last season. And now we have a new coach in San Diego as well. Thus, I expect Perreault to have a big season. And now with Pastujov entering the fold, I think there might even be a little bit of competition. Perreault also played with the Sarnia Sting. Competition is not a bad thing a lot of the time. And I think in this case, it could wind up being a huge asset to the San Diego Gulls because they didn't really have that last season. Of course, they dealt with a slew of injuries. But I think having that compete level for being the best forward on that team, I think it's going to be intriguing to watch. And if you're a fan of the San Diego Gulls, you're going to enjoy watching those two try to light it up. Maybe they'll wind up on the same line somehow. And you could see a line of, I guess you can go Pastujov down the middle. You could have Perreault right there. And I don't know who else you could put right there, but there's so many different ways to go about a top six line for San Diego. So it'll be fun to watch, folks. And with Dostal presumably starting the season in San Diego, watch them get off to a hot start. And I know we're not beginning with our Goals Thursday yet. Our Goals Thursday will start later this month, by the way. So just wanted to bring that up. Goals Thursday will be back later this month. When we go back to 5 days a week, Goals Thursday will return. So just want to throw that out there as well. So those are some guys that I think can make a difference. All right. So once again, just to reiterate, Carlson makes the team. Pastujov could make the team. Maybe San Diego more than likely. Perreault, San Diego more than likely. Everyone else that played in San Diego last season will probably wind up staying in San Diego next season because I don't know how many other guys that were on the Gulls are going to break through. I think Carlson kind of takes over that spot, and Sir Leo is going to be the guy. I think he's absolutely going to be the guy that's going to make a difference in that bottom six this season. Who else have I not mentioned as far as prospects? I mentioned Gauthier, Pastujov, Braden Tracy. He could be a difference maker. He could still be a difference maker. Josh Lapina, another decent little prospect there who I like a lot. So, yeah, they're deep on defense, but they're also still good on forwards. I expect all of them to have a much, much bigger season this year. All right. That's going to do it for this podcast. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, ad-free on Amazon. We're also on YouTube. You could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. My personal Twitter's @StimpyJD. And the show's, I can't believe it's not Twitter, is at LO_Ducks. And thank you all so much for your continued support. It is so greatly appreciated. And, once again, thanks for the kind words. As, I'm back. We're finally back with season number 5 of Locked On Ducks. Oh my God. I've talked about this crappy team for over 4 years. Can't wait to do it for a 5th consecutive year, but I will try to remain as positive as possible, folks. I will try. Once again, thanks so much. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason JD Hernandez saying have a great rest of the afternoon. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.